today we're going to be looking at the Lord's Prayer, and I've entitled the message, Discovering Who God Is Through Prayer. The Lord's Prayer is divided into two parts. The first part is all about God, and we will spend a lot of time there. The second part is all about our needs. And the Lord's Prayer covers the past, the present, and the future. It covers heaven and earth. It covers God's will and our needs. 53 simple words that Jesus prayed that came out of his mouth that are so important for us to learn from. The prayer was never meant to be a pattern. It was meant to be a framework. You kind of go with a spontaneity with a framework because you're trying to build relationship. So the prayer is not meant to be recited in a dead fashion. It's meant to be recited as a framework with spontaneity and freedom to touch heaven. And when you know who God is from the prayer, you'll begin to believe what God can do in your life. And you'll discover the amazing things that God can do for you. Jewish life was built on 3 pillars, which Jesus addressed in the context of this prayer. It was built on fasting, praying, and giving. Those are the 3 things that the Jews did regularly. Jesus saw that they were getting all of them wrong, and he preached to them and corrected them and taught them the Lord's Prayer. This then is how you should pray. In other words, the King James says, after this manner, not with these words, after this manner you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Can you see God comes first? And it's all about God. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So that verse is all about God, who God is, before we even ask for anything. Can you see that? Because who God is determines what God does. Who we know God is determines what we receive from God. Then moving on to verse 11, give us today our daily bread and forgive us our debts. Circle the word debts because it's a unique word. It goes on to say, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptations, but deliver us from the evil one. Personality, not just evil, the evil one, because there's a tempter, an accuser that we need to pray to be delivered from. Then in chapter 7 and verse 9, Jesus continues to speak about prayer, and he says, which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone, or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father, notice the word Son and Father, in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him. So there are 5 things we need to know today. The first one is this concerning the Lord's Prayer. Understanding who God is will release what God has. And so we need to understand the person of God before we come to the purposes of God, before we come to the provision of God. And you notice it says our Father, not my Father. It means we belong to the same family. You don't say my Father. You say the Lord is my shepherd, but you say our Father, because this isn't just a theater of individuals. It's a family where we belong to each other. It tells us who he is, and it tells us who we are. We are children. It tells us that God is singular. It doesn't say our fathers. It shows that there's one God, one unique God. And he's a good God because he's a Father. Then it goes to in heaven. Our Father in heaven. The King James says, who art in heaven. The NIV says, in heaven. Our Father in heaven. The place of rule, authority, power. The place of supply. The place of order. There's no chaos in heaven. There's no conflict in heaven. There's an abundance. So when you look up and you say, our Father, the next thing you should think of is heaven, where there is everything I need. Strength, grace, healing, power, provision. I'm going to the right place. Heaven isn't some weird our Father in heaven. No, there's a place that he has created where there's a throne, where there's worship, where there's order, and we are destined for heaven. Can I remind you that when you pray and you consider the awe of God, he's up in heaven, he's awesome, don't let your weaknesses plague you and put you off prayer. Because when you pray our Father in heaven and you kind of visualize his throne and his majesty, you can kind of go, oh, woe is me, like Isaiah did. But you still need to come with confidence. In fact, in James it says, Elijah was a man of like passions with us. And he prayed fervently that it might not rain. And it rained not on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. So here was a man just like us who had weaknesses, but he was able to change the weather and stop the weather patterns. You need to go to the Father and not be put off and not be disqualified.